Hey, this is Steven from LegitTechTutorials, and welcome back to Beginning Programming. Today we're going to be talking about interfaces. Now, interfaces are really abstract and really hard for people to get. I just barely understand it. It's more towards larger projects or larger group projects or company enterprise stuff. But when you get into an enterprise, it does become very, very important. So what is a interface? There's a lot of ways to explain it to new programmers. You have something like, you have now I'm going to do some actual drawing, not necessarily programming stuff. But let's say you have, a TV or a monitor or whatever, right? So there's a monitor. You know how you have the buttons down here and stuff? That's technically an interface, right? You're interfacing with these buttons, and most monitors all have the same exact buttons, right? They all have these buttons, and you know that every monitor has to have an interface to which the user is interacting with the TV. Change a channel. Similar to the other analogy, like a home theater system, right? You got dials and stuff. Now, everything behind that home theater system is very, very complicated. So you have stuff like remotes to interface, to make it simpler to interface with this home theater system, to change the volume, change the channel, change the input location, change the output location, this and that. Also, another thing that you would want to think about is like a cable. So like you have like a Cat5 cable, right? So a Cat5 cable. Now everything that has internet access uses a similar Cat5 cable. That is an interface. And now every computer or every network card or every laptop, this and that, they all have the same exact cable. They're all using the same interface to connect up to the internet. Not unless, of course, Wi-Fi, but probably whatever you're using to connect to with the Wi-Fi has that cable coming out of it, that interface. Exactly like Wi-Fi, you have 802.1, ABC, ABCNG, that kind of stuff. That's also an interface for Wi-Fi. Same thing as the 3.5 millimeter jack on your headphones. Same sort of interface. Or USB. Universal, when you hear the universal, that's usually an idea of the interface. Okay, so now now a more concrete example. So I'm on the Java website right now, and a good example of an interface, what they have on here is a bicycle. Give me 1 second. Okay, so you have a bicycle, right? Wow, I failed spelling that. Bicycle. Okay, so now a certain bicycle has certain methods that would be inside, or functions. It would have, something like change gear, speed up, and apply brakes, right? So basically you would have this interface, so you would say interface bicycle has the methods. So inside an interface you have no instance variables, and you only have methods or functions, but you do not have anything inside those methods. You do not implement what they call implement those methods. They're just open shells. So another way of thinking of this, what an interface is that it's a skeleton of something that would be universal, which I'll explain here in a second. So you have something like this, and this is, of course, the return type. So you would have the return type, the name. So let's say change gear. That's the name. And then you would have whatever parameters you want inside there. So here you have the return type, the name, and the parameters. And then of course you would have the semicolon right after that. This guy, semicolon. So that closes. There's nothing inside here. There's nothing. You cannot do that. You will get an error, syntax error, or a compiler error. Now, basically what happens is that when you go into your class, you say class implements. And this is basically what means uses a interface. This class uses the interface this. So of course the name of your class would be right here. This is where the name of your class would be. Implements bicycle. Bam. So now what's required by the compiler is you have to use all of those methods. They are required. Your class will not run unless you have every single one of those. So if we have change gear, speed up, and apply brakes, you need all three of those methods in here. Otherwise it will not run. Of course you can have the method have nothing in there and it will run, but that's the whole thing, is that this is basically a framework, right? Framework. Where, for example, you have, almost think of it like an API. An API is what you use from another company and then you can extend on it. So you basically have to use that, or you basically have to use what they wrote in order to interface with whatever they're using, you know, electronics or their website, this and that. Same exact thing here. So you have a skeleton. Basically what you do with a interface is you create a skeleton of how you want each of these classes. So it's just like having a law, right? So you have, the government comes up with laws and each state has their own interpretation of those laws. But they have those laws and then they implement those laws according to how they see fit. So for example, you say no speeding is a interface, it's a law, right? But when you get into the class called like California or whatever, you say, okay, and we have a speed limit on freeways of 65. Well, I think it's what? It's different depending on the freeway. Exactly. It's different depending on the freeway. So here, no speeding, you get a ticket. But in California, there's a different interpretation, as the freeways are 65 and they're different in Oregon. In Oregon, they're less. So each state has a different interpretation of the speed limit of their state. That's exactly how to think of it. That's the best way that I've come up with, is that you have a law, a nation law, a whole law throughout the United States that you have to abide by, but each state has a different interpretation of that law. So they're implementing that interface of that law and they create it. So that's basically what happens, is you just say implements this interface, and inside the interface you have the framework of how each one's going to play out. You have the different methods, this and that. For example, similar to the car one we came up with, is you would have, you know, the curb weight, this and that. So now every time you implement that interface, those are required. So basically what interfaces lead to is the use of code, is the big principle of code reuse, and being, you know, multi-purpose code that works in multiple places and keeps everything universal. Basically the interface keeps everything that you use universal. It's not too bad for one person, because you could not use the interface and just remember on each of your classes to have this in there. But for if you have a larger company with a lot more people, then you might want to have an interface, because someone could forget that's working on a way distance part of the project than the person that wrote the interface. Then you want to have that interface there to force those things to go down. Just like I said, you know, you can't have a computer that doesn't use a Cat5 cable. I mean, you basically have to use a Cat5 cable, you have to use that interface, and you have to use it correctly. So the people that, you know, came up with the Cat5 cable have a specific, set of wires inside the TX and the RX, and you have to use that in order to connect to the internet. Yeah. So that is an example, the best example I have for an interface. You will understand this a lot more the further you go into programming. You probably won't understand it in this tutorial series or the first or second or third programming tutorial series you go into on my channel. But when you get into larger projects with big companies or medium, projects or whatever, you will understand the use of the interface. As I yet don't really see too much of the power. I sort of see the power, but as an indie, developer that just works by himself, I don't really need it because I could just remember it between different classes. But if I were to work on something that would be used throughout the whole globe, then yeah, an interface is a good idea, because having a standard, it's basically creating a standard that you have to use in order to get things done within a project, would be very useful. Alright, so this has been Steven from LegitTechTutorials. Thank you for watching. If you don't really get this right now, you will get it eventually if you continue programming. That's what I'm going to end that with. Thank you for watching this video, and if you like this video, please subscribe for more videos like it in this series and other series as well. If you have any questions, email me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.